Misfits, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share something very special with you. After hosting over 450 episodes of the Misfit Entrepreneur and sitting down with some of the world's top founders, investors, and high performers, I started to notice something. Different industries, different backgrounds, different paths, but the same patterns kept showing up. So I distilled those patterns into a short, powerful guide called The Misfit Code: 21 Uncomfortable Truths from 450 plus entrepreneurs. This isn't motivational fluff, it's not theory, and it's definitely not the recycled advice that you hear everywhere else. In fact, it's a fast-paced, practical playbook that you can read in one sitting and then apply immediately to help you execute better, raise your standards, break through to your next level. And if you know you're capable of more, or you feel like you've outgrown where you are, or if you're tired of knowing what to do but not executing consistently, this guide was created for you. You can download it for free right now by going to misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. Grab the guide, read it in one sitting, and then come back and work through one misfit truth per day. All right, with that said, let's jump into today's episode. Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Chris Miles. Chris is known as the cash flow expert and the anti-financial advisor. He's built a reputation challenging traditional financial advice and showing entrepreneurs how to get their money working for them today, not decades down the road. Chris has really a truly incredible story. Not once, but twice, he achieved financial independence where his passive income exceeded his expenses. But his journey hasn't been without setbacks. After the last recession, he found himself with over $1 million in debt. And instead of declaring bankruptcy, he rebuilt his financial life using the same principles that he now teaches others. And today, through his company Money Ripples, Chris helps entrepreneurs and professionals create that passive cash flow and build those passive income streams. Over the past 12 years, his clients have increased their cash flow by nearly $300 million. So I'm excited to speak with him about why much of the mainstream financial advice doesn't work for entrepreneurs, how to uncover hidden cash in your business and your life, and the types of investments that can actually generate cash flow starting now, not years down the road. So Chris, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Let's rock and roll. Let's do it.
Well, it's great to have you on. And, I'm excited to talk about this stuff because this is, entrepreneurs, they're grinding, they're building their business, they're doing that stuff, but they don't think about these things that are just as important as building your business, which is creating that cash flow, putting the apparatus, I would say, the system in place so that they can really reap the benefits and the fruit of that labor, right? So before we jump into all that, though, tell me a little bit about just your story. Take 5 minutes or so and just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Well, I'll try to do the Reader's Digest version for 5 minutes because, obviously there's a lot of ups and downs and we can go more in depth on certain aspects of it. But
Sure.
My long story short, my entrepreneurial journey started when I was in college. When I was there, I actually intended to become a business consultant. I realized that was something that seemed kind of fun. I was a sociology major with a triple minor in psychology, Japanese, and ballroom dancing. So a little bit of a Renaissance man, which basically means, I should be an entrepreneur. It's like every CEO I know, they're like Renaissance men of sorts, right? And so anyways, I decided that if instead of just having an MBA and come out with book smarts, I want to have real life experience. So I took a sabbatical from college, dropped out, and said, all right, what do I do? What kind of business can I start? And the first one that came up that intrigued me was a financial advisor because I figured worst case scenario, I learned about investing as well as about business. So I said, let's use my little 1 year break here to get into this kind of business and understand it. And I love being an entrepreneur so much that I actually never went back to college. I actually never finished my degree, even though I had a 3.8, almost 3.9 GPA. I was like, screw it. Like, I'll make more money as an entrepreneur than I ever will with getting a degree in sociology and an MBA in business. So I went down that path. And 4 years in, as I'm doing this, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm telling people to set and forget it, like every other crappy financial advisor you probably met with. No offense to you that are financial advisors, of course. You must be the exception. But I was the typical financial advisor telling you to not put money in your business, invest in everybody else's business in their stocks instead of your own, right? Buy the mutual funds and everything. Well, after about 4 years, my dad reaches out to me. He says, well, Chris, when are you going to advise me? Because I want to retire at some point. At this time, he was 61 years old. This is back in 2005. And he says, listen, like, I'm burning out. Like, the stress of this job is literally killing me. I've already had heart attacks and strokes. I want out. So I look at his finances for the first time, see that he had paid off all of his debt. This guy was 100% debt free. Dave Ramsey would have been so proud. In fact, the truth is Dave Ramsey probably learned from my dad, most likely. So he was debt free, 100%, including his house. He'd stuff money in his 401k like every good boy should, getting that company match, and at the end of it, I had to tell him, I said, Dad, you've done a great job saving and you're debt free. The problem is this: if you try to retire today, you'll need to die in about 5 or 6 years because you'll run out of money at that point. And he said, well, that's not what I wanted to hear, Mr. Sunshine. What do I do? I said, I don't know. You did everything right from what I teach as a financial advisor. Only thing I can suggest is work more, save more. May have to work into your 70s, which is exactly what he did. And that bothered me so badly that this guy was the penny pinching saver, post-depression era kind of mentality, and yet it wasn't enough. And a month later, I'm talking with a friend of mine who quit. I actually trained him to be a financial advisor, but then he quit on me to go do real estate investing. And as I'm talking to him, he's like, Chris, this is real estate's awesome. He's like, in fact, my dad and I have partnered on some real estate deals, and we've doubled his income as a professor at the local university. I said, hold on a minute. You just did this a few months ago. That's too good to be true. There's no way that's possible. He finally just asked me, he's like, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free where they don't worry about money? I said, well, you have to throw that last part in. They all worry about money. They all worry about running out, living their money, running out too soon. All right, how about this, Chris? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing these investments you've been recommending? This is probably the same question that many of you guys have been wanting to ask your financial advisor too, right? It's like, how are you financially free, right? That's basically what he's asking. How many of you guys are actually financially free, truly? And as I thought about it, I'm like, well, there's guys that have been working here since the 1970s, and they don't seem like they can retire anytime soon. So probably none. There's your problem, Chris. And that took me down a path. I took the Matrix Red Pill. I became a misfit within my own financial industry. And just months later, I had to make a choice. I'm like, either I stay in the game and just ignore all the truth that I learned about financial advising not working, or I keep my integrity intact and I quit. And so I chose the latter. I said, I quit. I'll never teach about money again. I'll be a mortgage broker and teach ballroom dancing on the side. And that's what I was doing in 2006. Of course, I wanted to learn about the real estate strategies and stuff they were doing. So I started dabbling in that, doing some, helping with flips or wholesaling a little bit and things like that. Long story short, the thing that excited me the most, though, was learning that I could actually passively invest with other investors. I could loan my money to them, become the bank for them, loan my money and make, like, say, for example, 12% a year or 1% a month. That means if I give them $100,000, I get paid $1,000 a month of income that I do nothing for. And that blew my mind, because that was different than the financial advisor thing that I was teaching, which was, hey, if you have $100,000, good job. Now you can live on the 3% rule. You can pull off $3,000 a year on your $100,000, which makes nobody excited. It's definitely not sexy. Even if you have $1 million, you live on $30,000 a year. Well, $1 million at 1% a month means I'm making $10,000 a month, not $30,000 a year. And so that kind of just blew my mind. And eventually, later that next year in 2006, I had enough passive income to where I was able to retire, 28, almost 29 years old. And of course, friends and family, everyone want to know how I did it, because I'm this 28-year-old that doesn't need a job anymore. And so in 2007, I came out of retirement to coach people to save the world. And then the recession hit. And of course, the people our target market, our audience, were real estate flippers, who were the first to get hurt during the real estate crisis of 2007. So our business was failing, and I was going in the hole with that. My own real estate wasn't doing great anymore. I was going in the hole with that too. So I all of a sudden found myself in the hole, like $15,000, $16,000 a month between personal and business. And eventually it was over $1 million in debt. And as you mentioned, I did have to get scrappy. I pivoted away from teach people to get out of the rat race because now I was back in it and I can't teach something I'm not doing. And so I started teaching people how to find money, specifically business owners. Like, how do you find and free up cash to actually have money to invest? So I started teaching people how to do that. How do you find money you didn't know what you were losing or was hidden to you? And pivoted my business, was able to dig out of that hole. And eventually by the end of 2016 was financially independent myself. And so that's what I really teach people to do is how do you actually become work optional, as my book, The Work Optional Blueprint is called, is how do you actually have enough passive income to work because you want to, not because you have to? Because I find, especially in the entrepreneur space, and I'm no exception, that I don't really want to just retire and quit everything. Like, I can't just do nothing. I have to do something. But for me, it's more about impact. So what can I do that I feel like, God's blessed me in a lot of ways? How can I, take this great power with this great responsibility I feel on my shoulders to use it to give back? And that's why I keep teaching what I do. And that's what Money Ripples is all about.
No, that's great. And I want to unpack all this stuff. Before we jump in, we talked about this, but a lot of the listeners and viewers know too. I've owned an investing education business for over 20 years. And unconventional type of investing, actually cash flow investing. We primarily sell options. That's what we do for cash flow. And I think it's important to kind of give the state of the state of the industry that's out there, because like you mentioned, financial advisors and 3% rule, that type of stuff. And we, some are watching and things like that. In some ways, it's not their fault. A lot of financial advisors are just salespeople. That's all they are. They're salespeople. They're not really investors or anything. They're just like anybody else. They're just selling products, and they're making, 80, 100 grand a year doing that, working for, one of the big brokerages or something like that. Right. That's one type. But the other side of it is a lot of the issue too is, a lot of these guys are in a way hamstrung by the rules and the things that are out there that won't let them do some of the other things that really make a difference. I'll give you an example. After an exit of a business, I was flush with cash, and it wasn't something I had all my money working the way that I wanted it to, and all that stuff. And so, and this was back when rates were like zero, right? We were in ZERP mode, and so I was looking for yield. I'm like, great. I can just take this cash, let it earn, ahead of inflation, and, let it just kind of stack. I don't need it. Right. So I found a group that had access to some unique municipal bonds and things, because you get a tax advantage for that, that were paying at the time over 4%. When you have zero interest rates, you're getting over 4%. That's pretty good for money that you don't want to put at risk, right? Things like municipal bonds. And so I was like, all right, great. So we did some in that. And then, they had some that they were, looking to put in the market. And the thing that I said to them is, okay, here's what I want you to do, right? I want you to do what I call a collar, right? So I want you to sell puts on the S&P 500. And then I want you to collar it by buying a protective put on the backside with some of the income that's generated from that. Sorry, Dave, we can't do that. I'm like, why not? They're like, well, because we're not allowed. I'm like, wait a second. So you can just go buy the S&P 500 for somebody and hope that it goes up, they make money. If it crashes 20%, you're going to lose 20% of their money. But I'm giving you a way where we can actually protect the money if it crashes, and basically alleviate the loss with this strategy. And you can't do that? No, it's sorry, we're not allowed. Our hands are tied. And that's the industry. That's where things are. It's really kind of sad because, Goldman Sachs, all these guys, you wonder how they make so much money in their trading desk. That's exactly what they're doing, right? They're doing those type of things where the traditional financial advisor cannot do that for a retail client, it's kind of sad. Yeah. So to me, that's the state of the state. If I got something wrong, let me know. But, that's why I see kind of an issue, which is why entrepreneurs need to be looking at, okay, how do I teach myself, or how do I find the other ways to do things that I can do, and that only I can do, because I can't do them through these guys.
I'll share something I don't often share in interviews because, usually I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I dealt with this personally myself. when I was a financial advisor. This was even before I met with my dad. So it's interesting because my dad was kind of like that nail in the coffin for me, but I was already starting to open up to other options, no pun intended, because in 2000, I think it was going 2000, going into 2005 actually. I actually dropped my securities license, which is, people don't understand, like when you become a financial advisor, it's really easy to do. You just have to be able to pass a test with 70% and not have not robbed a bank or killed somebody. And you're pretty much able to become a financial advisor. Anybody can become a financial advisor, whether you've made money in investing or not. Anyone can do it. That's what I did. I mean, I was a 24-year-old kid that had never, other than a 401k, had never done any investing, So for me, like that was, it was just taking somebody off the street, and you really are paid as a salesperson. Now, in 2005, I got an opportunity to work with a company that taught people how to trade stocks and options. One of my neighbors was one of the big wigs in that company. He had created the algorithmic software and stuff for traders to know when to buy and sell. This is back in the 2000s, before AI was really a thing. It was more automation, right? And so
Let
he
me
got
guess,
me.
It was Invest Tools.
It was their competitor. It was called Teach Me to Trade, which was run by Russ Whitney.
Green arrow,
but
red
Invest
arrow,
Tools
right?
was literally down the street from us.
Yeah, that's funny.
And in fact, one of the guys that works for me that teaches about the insurance strategies, his dad was one of the partners in Invest Tools that sold to TD Ameritrade. Small world, but
nice.
So anyways, but yeah, like say a competitor, very same thing. Those, I'll tell you, those Invest Tools guys, man, they most of those guys even know what they're doing that were coaching you. They brought me on because I didn't have a lot of trading experience, but they knew I had good coaching experience, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to have you be a coach." So I went on, and I loved it. And I'll tell you, the traders I met, they were the ones that opened me up to start to question what I was taught as a financial advisor, because they'd say, "Yeah, those 401ks, mutual funds, like high risk, mediocre returns, like it's a waste. It's like you can make so much more money trading on your own."
Fees really hurt your returns, all that.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they were opening me up to that. And I didn't like hearing it at the time because, remember, I was getting paid as a financial advisor while I was starting to become a stock and options trading coach. But I'm the kind of person that I like to be right. And that means I have to admit when I'm wrong. So of course I started to really open up to this. And here's what's crazy. Coming back to this industry. Now I had that securities license. I had a 6 and a 63. I was actually studying to have my 65 as well, to be a fee-based planner. And, but all of a sudden they said, "Hey, you had a report, you had an outside business activity, that you're doing this stock trading. Well, you have to pick, you have to choose, because our broker does not like the fact that you're, even though I'm not advising what people to trade in, right? We don't like that you're doing that. And so you have to either quit that job or drop your license." So I picked the latter. I was like, screw you. Like, I'm dropping my license. I'm going to just do stuff on the trading side. And they're like, okay, best decision ever, because it almost like took off the handcuffs from me a little bit to open up my viewpoint a little bit more. And just like you, like I was teaching people to do like what Mark Cuban did. When he sold off his tech company to Yahoo, he didn't just get cash. He got Yahoo stock, but he got put options against it to protect against, well, eventually when Yahoo did start tanking, it's in the mid 2000s, and he made good money to make up for those losses. I was teaching things like married puts and strategies kind of like you're talking about, right? And using different option strategies to protective puts and whatnot to try to ensure people don't have as big losses, and again, that's just the stuff that a financial advisor will never know, never understand, because they're not paid.
It's also stuff that you're not allowed to do in a 401k.
That's right. Exactly.
Legally, rules wise and stuff, you can't. You can do it in IRAs, but not 401ks.
Yeah, which was crazy because I didn't realize you could even do self-directed IRAs and 401ks and stuff like that. I didn't know you could do that because they never taught me to do that. They just said, you just teach people to save, save, save. You just set it and forget it. You don't even think about it. Just trust us. Turn it over to us. You lack the time. This is what they always talk about. They talk about 3 T's in financial advising. Your clients lack the time, the training, and the temperament to do their own investing. Therefore, they should just trust you, which is really like a 4th T. Right? So turn it over to you and let you do all the work, and then you get paid whether they make money or not, which I think is kind of criminal, right? Like you lose 20% in the market. Well, yeah, you got a little 20% cut on how much you're getting paid, but you're still getting paid even when they're not. And that's the thing, is really the best investment as a financial advisor, if you're going to get a good investment through a financial advisor, is to join their team and become a financial advisor yourself. The business is the most profitable part of financial advising, not the investments they recommend.
Yeah. And so for everybody out there, look, it's to each their own, right? I'm not a financial advisor. Chris, you are or were. But this isn't financial advice, but it's to make you think a little bit just about, hey, maybe there's some other ways. So here's what I want to do, because I want to get into all of that, and I don't want to break it up. I want to just run through it with you for the rest of the episode. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come in and we're going to dig into all this stuff for you guys out there. Misfit entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses, and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed 6 figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high-performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of 3 non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again. Okay, Chris, so here's where I want to start. A couple lessons from you, and then I want to start digging in on all these unconventional ways, or just non-mainstream ways, if you will, that you help people grow cash flow and their wealth. So first, though, hey, you mentioned, 2007, 2008 hit. You got taken to the woodshed when it came to real estate and all that. You had to build it back up over, it took you to 2016. What lessons helped you rebuild to do it again, right? And I guess, what were the first moves that you did make to dig out of that hole to get there?
Truth. It required a lot of truth, right? I talk about it in my book. There's 3 concepts that's kind of like the main sections of the book, which is get lean, get liquid, get out. Get lean, get liquid, get out. So get lean means is be a wise steward of your money. This does not mean coming from a scarcity perspective of the saver, which is don't spend any money, right? Live on rice and beans, as good old Dave Ramsey will say, right? That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is get lean is start tracking your money. This is true both in personal as well as in your business. Track it on a weekly basis. I literally report my numbers to my team every single week. I'll report revenue that we make in the company. I will report whether we hit our profit goal or not, right? I report if I've got how much, like my liquid cash goal that we have for our company. Like I report that every single week to my whole team. I've worked for companies before that you never heard any of that crap. You didn't even know how much revenue you made, I'm very transparent with my team to say, this is what's going on. And so that requires you to be tracking money every week. So for example, I use QuickBooks for my business because every accountant has their own, you know how accountants are, let's be honest, right? They're if you get them excited, they look like this. That's about their level of excitement level. That's them actually leaping for joy. So when they see QuickBooks, they get that little smile, on their face, Well, I use QuickBooks. For personal, you can use things, whatever works for you. Like my wife likes just using an Excel spreadsheet that she tracks things on a monthly basis. I like things like Rocket Money. I used to use Mint. But I like to use things that are automated that help it make easier for me to not have to keep, nickel and diming every little transaction. I like,
ADD moment on there. You mentioned Mint. For those that are out there, there's a newer tool called Monarch, which is really
yes.
good. So check it out if you're looking to track your finances and all that stuff. I actually love using it. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Monarch's another one I recommend as well. Rocket Money, I think, is a little bit cheaper than Monarch, but for some people, Monarch is like perfect for like their personality, and that's what you kind of have to look for, is what fits best with your ways of seeing your financial world. But I like automations, so that's why I like those kind of programs. But track it every week, and I'll tell you, I will promise you, from hundreds and hundreds of business owners that we've worked with, right? If you just start tracking your money, you don't have to do anything. Just track your money. You will find literally hundreds, most likely into the thousands of dollars every month. You'll just naturally have more, because it's really this eternal law. It's the law of attention, different than the law of attraction, right? The law of attention just says that whatever you put your attention towards expands and grows. But whatever you ignore, there's also a law of decay. Whatever you ignore leaves you, right? So, for example, if I'm paying attention to my numbers in my company and whatnot, if I'm paying attention to sales or revenue or bottom line profit, whatever I'm putting attention towards, usually I will get that number will improve. But the opposite's also true. If I ignore it, it will get worse. For example, if I ignore my teeth, I'm going to lose them, right? If I ignore my spouse, I'm going to lose my spouse. If I ignore my kids, I'm going to lose them, right? If I ignore everything, in life, you lose it. Same thing's true with money. If you ignore it, you're going to lose it. And you will constantly be in this high level. As an entrepreneur, you could be in this high level rat race for the rest of your life. And I've seen this way too many times. I know you have too, where you make great money. And from the outside world, you're successful. Everybody thinks you're awesome. But in the back of your mind that you got to keep hustling to keep that lifestyle going. You cannot stop. Not that you don't not want to stop. It's because you can't stop, because you're going to be just as broke as everybody else without that business. It's like you're all in. And you get this lie out there that says you should be, reinvesting all your money in your business. That's not true. Even Mike Michalowicz, author of Profit First, great book to read, by the way, if you're a business owner, says that if you're reinvesting every dollar in your business, you're not profitable. You're just spending all your money. Even if you grow into a bigger game, sure, your revenue grows, but if you have no profit, you have no freedom. So you have to find the balance. You got to, yes, your investment should be the number one investment is your business, hands down. But build up the profit in your business, get it as automated and as managed as possible, and then take those profits out of your business and invest it to create multiple streams of other income. Because we don't know if there'll be another 2020 where all of a sudden they're going to say, hey, you're a non-essential business, right? As we so heard. And then all of a sudden you're scrambling. And I had way too many friends and associates and people like that were scrambling, because if they didn't have enough cash reserves set on the side, they were toast, because they didn't have the income coming in.
I think too, we're kind of in a time like that too, because it's interesting, because right now I was asked, I was on the board, and I was asked to become CEO of a tax software business that a couple of years ago. And so you mentioned CPAs. I was laughing a little bit because we deal with them all the time. But it's fun because our solution gets them very excited, because what that solution does is they use it for their clients, and it actually analyzes the tax return and then tells them exactly what tax strategies from the tax code, to apply to that return to save them the most amount of money. So it's found money, basically. It's kind of what you're talking about. There's money in plain sight, right? But even looking at the landscape in our world now, and even in the last few months, and I think I'm going to do a solo podcast and just share this. I'm knee deep in, obviously, the tech, the SaaS side, and all of that. The advent of these of what AI's capabilities are, the AI agent side of things and everything, there are going to be whole industries almost wiped out, replaced by the ability of these things to do that. Now, I know that sounds crazy and it sounds scary, but that's creative destruction. Other things come about, other types of businesses and jobs and, entrepreneurial opportunities. I think of the next 18 months is the golden age for AI to become a millionaire. I just think there are so many opportunities. It's ridiculous. But
Totally
there's
agree.
going to be a lot, like, even, I mean, you probably saw this in the last couple, 6 to 8 weeks. All the financial stock, Schwab, all those guys got creamed because Anthropic, Claude, came out with an AI financial advisor agent that can probably do a
Mhm.
better job than most of the financial advisors.
It's
And so
true.
all their stocks took a major hit because, right? What happens to
Mhm.
the revenue model? So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. So you have to be looking at how you take that money, make it work for you in different ways, and diversify it out to, different ways that are, whether it's investing in other businesses or things like oil and gas or different things like that, are here to stay, that can continue, keeping up with the times. Not to mention,
That's right.
as people have been feeling, we're coming out of a period where we had massive inflation, and that just
Mhm.
set a new floor. So now you hear like, oh, inflation's come down, it's 2% and stuff. Yeah, but that's on top of 20% increase.
Mhm.
So no wonder everybody's like, why do things cost so much more? Why does my dollar go as far? People don't even know that your dollar in 2015 only buys about 72, 73% today of what it
Yeah.
did back then. So
If
like,
that. Yeah.
and money has to keep moving, especially like, currency, like fiat currency, like, the US dollar or anything. If it sits still, it's losing value. So it has to stay moving all the time. And so
That's
that's
right.
why, like, investing back in the business, good, right? As long as it grows the business to create more revenue, which then provides a, better return, right?
That's right.
So, so this Robert Kiyosaki said this years ago, and I think it really hits home today: is savers or losers. If you put your money in
Mhm.
the bank, it just loses value all day long at the pace things are going. So with that as a backdrop, you talk about all this money in plain sight, found money and stuff. Give some
Yeah.
examples of what that could be for entrepreneurs in their business. What are the things you see most prevalent that they could attack and, free up cash flow?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned one of them, right? Is tracking your money. That's first and foremost. I've had busy entrepreneurs I find like $2,000 a month or more just by doing that. Not even changing their lifestyle, just by tracking their money and realizing where it's going. Often that subscriptions, especially lately with different apps, AI, or even automated type of things. Sometimes you don't even realize what you're paying for. And this is why you need to start
Right.
tracking your money. That's the first step. And so look
And
for
it
those
just
things that
causes
are,
you to analyze it, focus on it, and I'm going to
yeah,
cut that out. I'm going to cut that out. Right.
yeah,
That's
if
really
it's
the
not
exercise.
growing your stewardship, then get rid of it, right? Like that kind of thing. Speaking of getting rid of, like one of the other tax, like cash flow secrets I talk about is if you've got extra stuff, can you unload it? Stuff that you're not using. If I don't use it, then I want to lose it. That means either I want to sell it, donate it, get rid of it, just toss it, whatever. I mean, this is true even at home. Like when I was going through my hardest times, we were starting to we had a lot of stuff because we downsized our house. So if we wanted to park our car in the garage, we had to make sure we cleared it out. And so we sold off a
Hmm.
whole crap load of stuff just because it's like we don't really need this. Why is it just clutter? And so many people, especially in America, we have so much clutter. We even have to get storage units to keep that clutter in, right? And it's just we become hoarders of crap. And so find ways to get rid of it. Another one, taxes. You kind of mentioned that too, but that's one we easily will find at least minimum 5, 10,000 a year with pretty much every business owner. It's very rare that somebody's not overpaying on taxes because they might have an accountant or a CPA. It doesn't mean they have an accountant or CPA that's actually strategic. Like
Yeah.
they're what I call a passive accountant, where they're more just say, hey, here's what you owe, versus, hey,
Hmm.
let's strategize. I bet you there's some strategy we can do now this year before tax time comes up next year. Let's be proactive. And so you want to find those proactive accountants. Debt is another one. There's so many creative things I've done with debt for so many business owners. I mean, even if they're not drowning in debt, I'll tell you, I had one client where, I mean, they were pulling in probably a good, I mean, just personally, they were pulling about 700,000, 800,000 a year. Not even from their business, just personal profit they're pulling in. And they they had like was it $6 million net worth, something like that too. And in fact, just in stocks alone, they had $5 million just in stocks. And they wanted me to help them figure out how to diversify into real estate and whatnot. But when we started to analyze their cash flow, first thing I looked at was like, well, we can actually refinance your house, lower your payment. We can even do a cash out refi, pay off some of these other loans and some of these things you have, even though I know you can afford it. we can free up about $4,000 a month here. So we did that, freed up about $3,800 a month. That's 45 grand a year. And then the next thing we said, I'd like, hey, talk to the accountant here. And I think we can save up some money on the tax side because it looks like you're paying a pretty high percentage for the income you're bringing in. We were right. We were able to save them over 30 grand a year on taxes there. And then I saw they had a rental property, but the rental property was net cash flowing zero, but it had 200,000 of equity sitting in it. We're like, well, hey, if we sell that property, again, get rid of it, right? Sell it off. Yep. Guess what? We can take that 200,000, invest it. Even if you make 10% on that money, that's now, $1,600 a month, and we were able to get at 12%. So it was like, now it was at $2,000 a month. So just by making those moves, not even investing, not even liquidating any of their stocks, just by moving money around and doing stuff, we were able to free up about 100 grand a year. And then of course, we was like, hey, great. Your goal is to have about 250 to 300 grand a year. We're already like partway there. You can seriously just sell off maybe $1.5 million of your Meta or your Google stock that they had, right? They were very heavily focused on just those companies only. I was like, you sell $1.5 million of it, you can still keep your other $3.5 million and you will hit your goal this year, like of financial independence, right? And that was kind of fun to show them. And so that's where it's like, it's get lean, right? Is start to track and see where your cash flow is going and where we can actually plug up some leaks. Get liquid means get that money out of prison. Do not lock your money up in paying off your house early. Don't lock your money up in 401ks and try to pack it in there because especially if it's in a company 401k, I've had so many business owners try to dismantle them when they realize they can do better than a 401k, especially with less fees. And sometimes the one guy, and one of my friends took him 2 years before they give him the money back. They took that money instantaneously when he set up that 401k, but 2 years to finally get it out when he wanted to unravel it. So that's what I mean. Like, don't put your money in prison where you can't get to it because you want that money out, keep it liquid. And so instead, people who use 401ks will often have them use just simple bank accounts or life insurance accounts, savings there or something like that. So they can have it liquid and then they can get that money out to invest. Just like we did with that one client where it's like, cool, let's free up some cash flow and do some things here and improve that. But now we can liquidate some of that stock and then get it out to create passive income. And then they become literally work optional, where they work because they want to, not because they have to. And I'll tell you from a business owner standpoint, every business owner should become work optional, whether they plan to stay in the business or exit it, right? Because the one thing I've noticed as a business owner is that business is easier to do when I don't need the money for my business. In fact, it's interesting. If you've ever been to any networking events with other business owners, and you can always tell the ones you want to avoid because they're the ones that like are throwing business cards at you like Chinese stars, right? They're like, call me, like, do business with me. You're like, I don't even know you. You're just throwing these business cards. I'm getting paper cuts from you right now. And they're like, yeah, but it's, just use me. And then what they're really saying is, I'm desperate. I need money. Yeah. Not that you trust them. And even if you don't know that, you feel like you have to shower afterwards. You just feel icky. That I call it business breath, right? When they're just desperate for business. But imagine the opposite, where you're like, listen, like, yeah, I can help you, but I don't need your money. I don't need your business, but you probably need me. Now you come from a much bigger position of power and influence. And when it's up happening, you actually do less work and get more people converting. I had one client who was a chiropractor where we actually freed up in total between refinancing and stuff. And we actually used his IRA money. He was afraid to cash out his IRA because he didn't want to lose his retirement account. But I was like, well, listen, we use 100,000 your IRA. By doing some moves here, we can free up 50,000 a year of cash flow for you. Well, between that and some tax savings and everything, it was about 70,000 a year that we improved his cash flow. So about 6,000 a month. Well, as a result, he relaxed. He actually started to enjoy his practice again. And the crazy thing is his patient conversions went up. His leads didn't have to go up at all. He just had to feel better in his current situation financially, knowing he was safe, knowing he had enough liquid cash reserves, knowing he had enough income and cash flow, coming through. He's like, I don't need the money. And then all of a sudden people said yes. I think that's a superpower that so many entrepreneurs miss out on because they're always in hustle mode, but never in freedom mode.
And that's because your attitude changes. The way you approach the world changes. The way that people see you changes versus like it becomes not about you. It becomes about them. And they see that in that way.
Yeah.
And because you have that luxury to be able to do that, right? And something you keep mentioning, I think it's really important to hit on here is there's a difference between cash flow and net worth, right? A lot of people chase the number, Like I need to be worth $10 million, right? That's my number. But it's not that. You want the $10 million lifestyle, whatever you think that is. And when that actually may be $500,000 in cash flow a year that you need to get that. Right. And
That's right.
so I think a lot of people get focused on the net worth versus building the cash flow, which is that passive or, semi-passive income, or that plus what you do for work because you want to work, right?
Yeah.
Type stuff that adds up to give you that lifestyle that you want. And I think that's a key thing that people need to think about. It's about building the cash flow streams, and financial independence obviously is when your cash coming in
Mhm.
from passively is more than your cash going out or your expenses, right? So whatever
That's
that
right.
is for you, that's what I think people need to focus on. I take it that's what
Totally
you
agree.
help people do the same, because that's really the key.
Yeah. Well, it's like people that brag about their revenue in the business. But I'll tell you this, your spouse doesn't give a crap about how much
Mhm.
revenue you make. They care about how much profit you bring home, right? If
Right.
you're like, oh man, my revenue is up to $20 million this year. It's awesome. We just grew our company by 400%. She's like, well, that's cool. What did our paycheck grow by? Oh, it shrank by 20%, but I grew that revenue. No one gives a crap about it. And net worth is no different. Net worth is worth less than income, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want. It's like,
Yeah.
I had this guy that was a W 2 employee, 59 and a half years old. He's like, I've got almost 2 million sitting in my 401k right now. My financial advisor at Vanguard can't even tell me when I'll be able to retire because I want to live on 200,000 a year. I said, well, that's the problem, is that the thing is, in your 60s, there's a 3% rule. The 4% rule was debunked so long ago, but people still talk about it like it's real. No, that's if you're in your 70s. It's 3% if you're in your 60s. And so, the advisor obviously wasn't telling him when he could quit, because do the math. I mean, he had $2 million,
Mhm.
3% means he can live on 60,000 a year. The guy wants 200,000. That means he has to get up to $7 million. He has to more
Yeah,
than
he's got a
triple
10-year
his
run
money.
rate at that point. That's it.
Yeah. Assuming no inflation too, right? Because obviously there's
Yeah.
inflation, that number could keep increasing as time goes
Sure.
on. And I told him, I was like, well, either the financial advisor doesn't know how to calculate it because, he just doesn't know, or he's too scared to tell you that you got to triple your money. And the likelihood is the market. I mean, the projection already that the stock market's only going to do between 3 and 5% average for the next 10 years, because we've had the longest bull market run this last 17 years since 2009 that we've pretty much seen, we'll probably
Mhm.
seen our entire lifetime, So
Yeah.
for people to think that, oh yeah, it'll be fine. Like I'll just keep packing money in my mutual funds. Yeah, good luck with that.
Oh, and don't forget
Um,
we continue to rack up incredible debt at an enormous pace, and at some point that's going to break something in a much bigger way.
oh yeah, throw in Iran
So
on top of that, and you're screwed,
yeah.
right? So
Well,
yeah,
we'll see how that pans out. But the point
yeah,
is that we're at 40 trillion in debt. What happens when we're at 60 trillion in debt?
right.
Right now, I think what's the even the Social Security Administration says they'll be out of money in 2031.
Yep.
Maybe I think
Yeah,
it's
between
2031,
2031 and
right?
2033. But if they
Yeah.
don't address it
So
by 2028, they know that we're going to have a massive crisis too. And that's again,
mhm.
with all the drama we've seen, that hasn't even been addressed yet. And people are like,
And
well, how
it
are we going to pay
won't
for
be
it?
until 11:59 p.m. the night before it's supposed to be addressed, and we'll see what
Yep.
happens then, right? That's
You'll have
so
another
that's
government
again, that's
shutdown.
why like I don't the way I and it's the way I look at it, and some people are like
Mhm.
you're full of whatever. I do not expect ever to collect a dime of everything I've paid into Social Security, even though it's a
Right.
minuscule amount, honestly, in the end of what you pay in that you actually
Mhm.
get. It's a joke in that sense. I just I never plan to see a dime of that at my age.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand that or don't think about that. And that's why you've got to take control, and you've got to have control over how your money works and grows for you. Um,
That's right.
and I mean, you see it. And this is why we do what we do at 12-minute trading at wealthstacker.com, at the different things that we have, is because like the average person by 40 doesn't even have like 100,000 saved up.
Yeah. It's true.
And shoot, that's barely I don't even know if that's middle class anymore in today's world, right? So it's
Right.
it's you've got to take control and take responsibility, and you know don't rely on government or a financial advisor so much. Use them, where it makes sense. Find good ones and use them if you want to, but be the quarterback, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, you're the boss. I
sorry.
think that's one thing
Yeah.
people forget. They
Yeah.
think the financial advisor's the boss and they got to do what the financial advisor tells them. No, you're the boss. They fulfill on what you want.
Yeah.
And you got to
Right.
switch that
Good point.
mentality because like I told somebody this morning because she was like, "Oh, maybe I should fire my financial advisor." It was actually my parents' financial advisor and we got this great relationship. I'm like, "You don't have to fire him." I'm like, "Do you have anything with him?" "Well, I've got a small Roth IRA." Fine, whatever. Like, if you want to use that Roth with him, great. That's what he's there for. He can sell you that crap, but he's not licensed to make you money. He's licensed to sell you very specific things. But once you
Right.
go outside that Roth IRA, don't listen to him. Like he's
Yeah.
not going to give you, and even with that Roth IRA, the truth is you could probably do other stuff, self-directing it and doing other cool things with it anyways. But I'm like,
Mm.
don't listen to him about that stuff. Like the other stuff outside, that's why we go outside of Wall Street, like outside of the traditional, like, buy a mutual fund type of crap. It's like, no, there's
Yeah,
alternative
talk
options.
about that. What are some of those lesser known investment strategies that people should do some diligence on, learn more about, have an understanding of, right? That
Yeah.
they can talk with their financial professional about if they want to. What are some of those?
Yeah. And we already kind of addressed like stocks and options trading, things like that. And that's more of an
Right.
active. That's not so much a passive hands off thing. I will tell you from my experience though, those people that actually do trade stocks and options and do it not because they want to escape from something, but they actually love the hunt. Those are the ones that actually would keep getting better as traders. The ones that are trying to escape something, saying, "Oh, I just want to get out of my job," I would watch them and they would never become better traders because they were doing it for the wrong reasons. And so I have noticed that the minority of cases, if people actually are doing that, they just love it. They'll do it whether they make money or not. Those are the people, ironically, that make the most money in the trading world. Um, Now,
Yeah.
often, like other things outside of it, where because a lot of our people are like, "Hey, I'm busy in my business or I'm busy with my job or whatever. I don't know if I want to learn a brand new thing and do this kind of thing. What else could I do?" Well, I like to look for asset-backed investments. So often real estate comes up, but not like the real estate where you're buying this property in your backyard and then you're dealing with the tenants, the toilets, and the trash. You have plumbing issues. You got to be the one dealing with it. No, that's not what I like at all. I like to be hands off. So there are things like turnkey rentals where you can buy rentals anywhere in the country and that property management company does it for you. They take care of the property.
Mm.
They deal with the headaches. They deal with the paperwork and filling it with renters and all that kind of stuff and running credit checks. I don't have to do jack squat, right? So
Right.
I love that kind of investing. That's great. Funny enough, I actually had a guy that taught people how to trade stocks and options became a client of ours because he said, "Hey, I love options trading." He's like, "I just want to be able to make money when I don't have internet access." So he's like, "Get me into some of this other stuff that could be more hands off too." And so that was like one of them, right? Another one that's more popular in the last 3 years, that's been better because rentals haven't been great the last 3 years when interest rates went
Right.
up. Lending your money. I kind of mentioned that before. You can lend your money to real estate investors
Private
and even
credit.
have the property as collateral. So you become the bank,
Mm.
just like the bank has your mortgage. If you don't pay them, you
Yep.
basically lose the property to them, right? It's an interesting position to be in. I used to think that equity was like the main goal as an investor. I've realized that equity is not always the best thing because when you sell off your house and you've got a mortgage on it, who gets paid first? The bank gets paid
Yeah, the
first, right?
lender does. Yeah.
The lender does. That's right.
The first
The person
position.
that has equity gets paid last. It's whatever's left over. You get the crumbs, right? So if you're in a hole, you got to make sure you pay off the debtor, but you could walk away with losing money as an equity investor. Well, as a lender, you can do the same thing with real estate investors, but if they don't pay you back, you can take the property, right? There's a little bit of collateral there that you can take on. Not that you want to, but
Right.
it's nice to know you can do that and still earn double-digit returns. So
Yep.
lending is a great way. I'm in a lending fund, so you don't have
Mm.
to go into an individual property. You can even be in a fund where it's diversified in different places. They pay 1% a month on that money.
Yeah.
So if
Just
you got 100 grand,
I'm in a few of those too, oil and gas as well, and then some of the real estate ones. Just
yep,
you'll say this, and it's really true. You have to do your diligence on the private ones are the best. The ones with a track record for a long time are the
yes,
best. There's been like you've probably seen it, like Blue Owls blowing up in the marketplace right now, and some of
mhm.
the other ones that try to do like retail funds, and they can't redeem, like people can't get their money out, and so private credit is like right now everybody's like, oh, private credit's the next 2008.
Yeah,
And we'll see what happens with that, but there are some really really good ones that are out
mhm.
there. Typically you're going to need to be an accredited investor, And those
Yes.
rules are changing actually and getting lowered, so more people
Yeah.
can utilize that. But you, you don't want to just go to something that like anything. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. So take your
Yeah.
time, interview them, ask the questions, be an entrepreneur, be curious. Really make sure you understand the business and what they're doing, and how they've done it. Look at their track record and verify it before you go in. But man, there's some
Absolutely.
really good ones out there with all that. So
Oh, for sure.
those are great
Yeah. I mean,
examples.
that's a great example. I mean, yeah, you mentioned like syndications, right? I mean, you can
Yeah.
get ownership, like pull your money together with other investors to buy apartment buildings or
Mhm.
warehouses. Warehouses, I mean, apartment buildings got kicked in the
Yeah.
teeth the last 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Self storage got kicked in the teeth the last 3 years, although they're coming back. But
Right.
like warehouses for like Amazon warehouses or even just
Yep.
industrial complexes,
Well, data
literally
centers now.
data centers. Yeah, that's another new
Yeah.
one now that's starting to come
Yeah.
out, right? And I mean, all these kind of things. I mean, they've been going on. You can invest in. You mentioned oil and gas. I actually have several investments more on mineral rights versus like
Mhm.
I don't like to do the explorative drilling as much because yeah, you can get the tax benefit, extra tax benefits,
And
but
that
you
tax
could also
benefit is
lose
you get to
money,
write off 90% of your investment in the first year. Everyone. That's
right?
what the big tax
Plus,
benefit is there.
15% of the gains you get are tax free, as
Yeah.
well too. So there's kind of cool things with oil and gas that I like,
Mhm.
but I usually go for the mineral rights where I'm more of a business interest and that kind of thing
Yeah,
that
well,
like
you
you
want the
said.
passive income. There's some good passive income groups that are out there that they own the wells, and basically you get a piece of the action every month from all the oil and gas that they sell.
Oh yeah,
There's some that are
100%.
paying higher than 12%, which are great. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's just again you got to investigate this stuff, guys, and just look for ones that appeal to you, but do your diligence on them. All right,
Yep.
last question for you before we get to your Misfit 3.
Yeah.
Um, Entrepreneurs listening today, right? We talked about the philosophy, we talked about the different, the where the state of the state is. We talked about some of these passive income opportunities, things like that. But if somebody wanted to be really serious and build serious passive income over, like, say, the next 5 years, what
Mhm.
steps would you tell them to be taking right now?
Get profitable in your business. Get as much profit as you can. Bring it home. Right? That's so when I talk about get lean, get liquid, get out, get lean and get liquid is the key, right? Get profitable in that sense, if you were to put it that way. And then get that money in your hands, right? Make sure it's liquid. You can get to it. Doesn't mean that you're making 0%. It doesn't mean you're burying it in your backyard, but get that money out. That means maybe not paying off your house earlier. It might even mean maybe I want to do a cash out refinance, especially because rates have dropped recently. I have a client right now. It's like looking at, 5.5%, which we have not seen in like 4 years, and he's like, hey, I can get 5.5% mortgage on my property and lock it in. Cool. Well, if we can get that money out at such a low rate and then invest it, that's
Mhm.
free money, right? That's infinite rate of return if it means that you're not the one actually investing your own cash out of pocket. So I think that's
Right.
the best thing you can do is really get lean. Make sure this applies to your home too, not just your business, and then get that money liquid and in your hands. So then you're ready to get it out.
No, that's great. And that's great advice and great way to end it. And you can always look at it like, if I'm getting 10% on my money and it's costing me 5%, I shouldn't pay
Mhm.
out the 5%. Keep the 10% going and grow that, because that pays off the 5%.
For
And,
sure.
and so on. So just think of it in that terms. So great points. Great way to end it. Before we get to your Misfit 3, we're going to do that. We're going to take just one more quick break. We'll be right back with Chris's Misfit 3.
Misfits. People ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance. And it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today.
Okay, it's time for Chris's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom for the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Chris, what are your Misfit 3?
I'd say this is, and I have, between my wife and I, in our previous marriages, we have 8 kids, right? So this kind of thing I would tell them is, one, first and foremost, is be a value creator. The secret to creating more money, I always tell them that if you're always asking how do I make more money, you will miss the mark. The bigger question you should be asking is what causes money? And that's value creation, right? Is how can I be a value creator? How can I create a win-win in people's lives? How can I serve people or create a solution and become a solutions provider for people to help them do that? So first and foremost is how do I become a better value creator? How can I create more value for more people? That's the key to making more money, to creating more income. The second thing is, basically live a life of integrity. Make sure you do what you say you're going to do and do it. And I'll tell you in business, especially lately, anybody who's ever hired contractors to work on your yard or your house knows that if you just show up and do the job you're asked to do, you're pretty much in the top 5 to 10% of all contractors out there today. Right. And I think that's true. It's actually, I think in business, it's easier to become successful now than ever if you're willing to at least hold to your word, like your word is your bond. And so even though it's not exactly a financial strategy, I think it has massive financial implications because it's what's behind what creates the money. And then the third thing is don't ever underestimate cash, especially if you're a business owner, especially in life, is have cash available. In 2022, when everybody was telling us, hey, do not have cash available where you're going to lose inflation, I did the opposite. And maybe that's like a fourth point, right? Is the opposite is do the opposite of what everybody's telling you to do. If they're all telling you to use all your cash to invest, you should probably have cash on hand, not invested. Because pretty soon you have all these people that their cash is gone and they can't get to it. And now you're the only one with cash left. And now you get to make the rules. So I would say that is that, I guess, if I were to change that a little bit would be yeah, we should definitely have get lean, get liquid, get out, but make sure that you're also doing the opposite of what the masses are doing because that's usually the secret to success.
Yeah, be careful to follow the herd. Great advice across the board there. Thanks for sharing that. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Anything that's Money Ripples, whether it's at Money Ripples on social media, moneyripples.com, or you can check out our Money Ripples podcast. We're actually in our 12th season, over 1,000 episodes deep. So feel free to follow us there.
Great. We'll link to all that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business, no offense, for reasons I will talk about here in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneurs, your first episode with us, welcome. It's such an honor to have you, and I hope you become a regular listener and subscriber of the show. And for those of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And go out and check out the show notes for this episode. Why? Because I do them myself. And it's part of my personal growth routine where I go back through these episodes. I pick the best pieces of wisdom, insight, and just great things from people like Chris, and I share them with you, kind of my personal take on things. So check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Help share Chris's message. And I say this in every episode. We all know like one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Chris shared was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And then again, Chris, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
It's been such an honor. I appreciate it.